here's our agenda. I'll get to number one here in a second, but Eddie's going to be doing some of the heavy lifting. I'm sure we'll interrupt him a couple times, but you know, high flyover. He's going to discuss the evolving landscape of security, what we're seeing. He's got some cool statistics and trending we're going to talk about. Then we're going to give you some, what I would call some pro tips on how to increase your security posture, especially now that you're working from home. Hopefully these are tips that you can use yourself and maybe even disperse out to your work colleagues. And then Eddie's going to talk more specifically about how Arctic Wolf can help, right? Once again, improving that security posture. So I think you guys will enjoy that. And then if you've been paying just a little bit of attention, you got a chance to win some Amazon gift cards and a rousing game of Kahoot. Anthony's going to be running that. We've got 6 or 7 questions. It's equal parts paying attention and being quick, which is why I always lose when I play that game. And then if we have time, we'll do some Q&A, next steps, call to action, justify our existence type stuff. So today I'm going to talk about credibility. I'll move through it pretty quick. I want to get to Eddie. But before I get to that, I see a lot of friendly folks in the attendee list. Gosh, we got almost 70 people. That's awesome. I did want to briefly just talk about who Eagle is in general. So we are what I would call a data center centric VAR or integrator. We're good at compute, storage, business continuity, disaster recovery, data center security, application delivery, VDI, backups, right? We can help with you positioning when you should go to the cloud and what data you should move over to the cloud. We've got some managed services. But really what I wanted to focus on, why Eagle, is that we're a little bit different because we're very heavy on the engineering. We're about 3/4 engineering. My old favorite running joke is there's not a lot of eye contact at the Eagle Christmas party. We do best of breed, which I think makes us different. So we go out and we find technologies, we do the due diligence, we find out what we think is best for our customer, and then we get trained up on that. We make sure we can do our own installs, we make sure we can do our own support, and that gives us a cradle to grave mentality. So we're really tuned into how well the product's working for our customers. I think that's a better mousetrap. I think it makes us a little different than our competitors. I hope you guys agree. Moving on to the next slide, just those couple minutes on credibility. So just to be candid, I think when you guys think of the word sales, right, you probably don't think of the word credibility first. I used to be on your side of things, and I used to be a little guarded, right, when the sales guys came in. I would think of the big $1 million marketing companies and the $1 billion companies behind them. I would always try to remind myself that they're probably better at understanding what you want and speaking to that than actually delivering on what you need, right? And then I would always think of the sales guys and these quotas. They have to sell stuff every 4 months, and how that might actually compromise their ideals. So where I'm going with this is Eagle's different. I don't know how else to say it. We're even structured different. Our owners are 3 engineers, right? They're not businessmen so much as they are nerds that manage to be successful. Our salespeople don't have quarterly numbers. They don't have any false reason to sell you something. We believe it poisons the process. And engineers like Anthony and I, we have zero pressure to sell anything. Anthony and I can talk about products that we don't even sell. We can tell you that you shouldn't buy something in our humble opinion. We have no pressure to do anything other than the right thing. And I wish you guys could sit on our internal meetings and hear our ownership interrupt us all the time and ask, is this right for the customer? Are we doing the best thing here? So when you look up credibility in the dictionary, it distills down to earn trust. And while it's nice to work at Eagle and rely on 40 years of earned trust, the thing that Anthony and I always have to remind ourselves of is that while it takes years to earn that trust, one little compromising moment and we can lose it all.
All right, so I appreciate the time today. Hopefully, looks like we have 78 people on today, so it'll be pretty good here. Some of you might be actually probably eating a little bit of lunch right now, so it'll be good. So again, I am Eddie President. I'll be getting some information from some input in from like Brian and Anthony to really give their context of what I'll be talking about too. Because what I found is that within the security market right now, the sharing of information is vital. We're seeing that from a lot of different companies. People are sharing some different ideas, which I'll be bringing up, We're trying to share ideas. A lot of people are really trying to work together. The security market sometimes was, well, this is my product, this is our product, but it seems like everyone is kind of working together, and also working with our partners is very vital. And same thing we do when we do work with Eagle. And so what we're going to be going over is remote workers, security challenges, go over a showdown exercise, and then how Arctic Wolf can assist and part of the managing the risk. Now, and then I'll pass it back over to Brian. But when we look at a lot of the remote worker security challenges, what's interesting is that a lot of companies from the last, I'd say 2 weeks or so, there's been a lot of presentations that have been about remote workers. What we did was we really wanted to say, okay, let's take some of the best stuff that we found and kind of bring those all together in a way that's easy to understand. And what we found is that early on within the remote workers, they were on this on-the-fly mentality. A lot of individuals are going in and putting in processes and workflows on the fly and not really being able to put the due diligence of how that could affect the environment. And we'll really dive into that a lot more. What we're also seeing is that the limited resources are limited with the current infrastructure that's needed to be tested, and also individuals. I've met with a few individuals that, not everyone got furloughed, but a fraction of the staff did. And so instead of them maybe having 3 or 4 IT people, they're only able to have 2 for right now. And so that really put a constraint on them because they still had these projects that still had to get done, especially from a security standpoint. And so when this stuff is happening, making sure that we have a course of action and a plan for things like that. Because things like this happen all the time if you really think about it, right? People could leave jobs, things could happen. You need to be ready for those contingency plans. And so what we found also is that hardware sourcing became a challenge. And if you start thinking about in technology, a lot of your hardware comes from overseas, right? You have over in Asia, you have a lot of different chipsets, you have storage, things like that. And so trying to make sure that we can still do our job has been pretty hard from a challenging perspective because of the ability to get to certain locations. As an example, right before this call, I was on a call with a potential customer, and they have about 4 or 5 sites. Only 2 of them they're able to actually get to. So the hard part is how do you get individuals that maybe are not IT people to actually go in and do work remotely? Because before maybe you were able to fly there and get projects done, but that significantly delays implementation. And then when we look at the standard employee, the behavior is changing. What's interesting is that it's changing in 2 different ways. One, I think is pretty good. They're getting a little bit smarter, but the second part of that is that they're getting a little bit smarter. I'm seeing a lot of different people, and we are seeing that they're creating VPN connections, RDP boxes, things like that, because they're trying to work remotely. And especially if IT does not give them the ability to become more remote, then they kind of figure out their own ways of doing things. And that's where it becomes a big challenge. And when we start talking about it, we should really start talking about an expanded attack surface. So, when we see the expanded attack surface, there's multiple ways in which this is happening, especially the different types of attacks that are happening around that attack surface. And we'll go into more detail into these, but fear phishing is one of them, right? And we'll dive into that. But when you have the COVID-19 cures, stimulus check registrations, free test kits, things like that, a lot of people have lost money for doing things that they thought was right. And so when you put that in conjunction with the bring your own device and the ability not to have endpoint vulnerability scanning and understanding what those vulnerabilities on those desktops, then you start creating this attack surface that it becomes a lot easier. And so what we want to do is make sure that we understand what is happening in the world and make sure you understand as well. And if you see on the bottom here, I wanted to really point this out. And this was only about, I put this in here about a few weeks ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, but I know it's more than this. But Checkpoint said even 16,000 domains registered since January. 93 of them were used as malware, and 2,200 of those are suspicious. So I bet you this number is getting bigger and bigger. We're starting to see that. And these websites and these phishing campaigns are becoming even better, because all of the bad actors and people who are trying to do bad things are now all focusing on COVID. Before, they might focus on DocuSign, or maybe they'll focus on a different part of the business, but they're really going after a multiple factor. And we'll kind of talk about that around fear, around compliance. And so for us, it's really making sure that we understand what's happening.
Hey, Eddie.
Yeah.
Just to add a little context to this, one of the biggest things that I'm talking to customers about right now is the fact that these remote workers, they're at home, and let's be honest, that they're in pretty crappy environments, right? They may not have IPS, they may not even have good antivirus, and they're then reaching back into their corporate network. So to your point, this is a dream situation for people that are trying to capitalize on COVID. If they can get into the home environment, they have a lot more capabilities to get into the corporate environment, even if it's just laying a little mousetrap and executable on a corporate file share. So that expanded attack surface is not to be taken lightly.
Right.
Yeah, and to take that a step further, I think because of kind of the spontaneity, whatever that word is, how this all happened without a bunch of planning, right? I'm assuming a lot of security processes might have been thwarted because it was better to get, employees online than it was to have it all secure. So not everybody had the perfect plan in place.
Exactly. Yeah, good information there for sure. And what we're seeing, especially from like the fear phishing campaigns, are, they're being targeted. The HR and the IT departments are really being targeted. As you can see here, this actually came from like KnowBe4, given some credit where it's due there. But when you're starting to see these type of phishing campaigns where it's having individuals going to a survey or a seminar to understand more about what's going on, we all want to be informed, especially when there's uncertainty. The easiest way for certainty is to look at information. What we really want to make sure that is when you start seeing these type of emails or employees is it's educating them and making sure they understand where that source is coming from. Make sure you're adding external to subjects that are coming from outside, especially if it looks like it might be coming from HR, but it's coming from, let's say, China or some other country or state. We want to make sure that our users understand the importance of these type of security best practices that you can do. And one of the things that I think is interesting is fear makes humans do emotional things. And that is key for what's going on. If you think about security, a lot of times it's playing off human emotion. It always has been, but it's even more now because people are, again, worried and want to have as much information as possible. And so when we take that in consideration to other types of threats that are happening from a fear phishing campaign, right? Whereas in a lot of individuals would look at an email, and we've always told them, hover over the email name. Well, it's not like they hover over every single link, unfortunately. They'll hover over this particular email, and they use a spoof helo command, right, where it shows it's coming from cdc.gov. But whenever they highlight the link itself, it's going to a healing website, right? And so when you see things like this, you want to make sure that you do have, sender policy framework enabled to help mitigate some of those helo commands, but also making sure that your users, if they have information they want to look at, let's say they wanted to understand about now airborne, do your own research. Have them not click on the links, but go to the cdc.gov website. Get the information directly there. Take that link, copy it, paste it into a browser there if you're really trying to look at it, because it has the .gov in there. But following the link and things like that become very dangerous. And I think it's something that we got to make sure that that we are understanding for these individuals. Now, just to highlight what Brian and Anthony was talking about, and what I've talked about a little bit, is that we wanted to prove or see if the attack surface is truly increasing. So to do this, we have all of our customers that, if you're an Arctic Wolf customer, we do external scans. That's included in our service, vulnerability scanning. We do a lot of different things for our customers, which is part of our service. And when we just looked at our thousands of customers that we have, we looked across where their open ports are. So we trend this. We're a very big analytical company. And we saw that just in January 2020, and this is maybe a couple weeks old, actually about a week old, actually, about 170% increase from January 2020 of just open ports. Now, on one side of it, it's great. Individuals are allowing their workers to actually connect in and have more availability to their applications. But it increases the risk, right? The external risk significantly starts to increase. You know, when you start seeing an external risk increase by 20%, that's a big number. We would, you want it to be more flatline, but when things happen, we want to make sure that we can account for that. And so it's very important to know that a lot of these that people are opening, there's not a lot of security sometimes thought about these changes. They're not going in going, okay, when I make this change, I'm going to document what I'm doing, right? I'm going to review my firewall after we've done this to make sure I haven't forgot to disable something that I just did temporarily. You know, making sure that, hey, okay, I might only do vulnerability scans externally every year when I do a pen test. Well, I might want to start doing this more often, especially from this work at home, because of changes that I've made. And so this is something that we've seen within our own customers. And if you think about this, 170% or 20% increase, and you put those numbers across the United States or around the world, that's a ton of threats that are happening. And everyone on this call, there probably are reports that you open that you didn't have before, right? A lot of times we just go by IPs and we don't say, okay, what exact ports do I need to get it working? Because in a pinch, when everyone had a week or so to get this done, everybody was like, let's just get it going now. Let me just give it a big range instead of the exact ports that I need. That's when you start causing more issues and giving yourself more ways of being compromised from bad actors or from hackers and things like that. Brian, Anthony, did you want to give any input on this as well?
Well, you know, as it relates to external ports, when we talk to folks, there's really no policing, right, on folks out in their house and how many exposed external ports they have. And in fact, oftentimes they're cheap, you know, routers that haven't been updated in 3 years. Have the capability turned on so that extra open ports can even be created by applications or hackers, right? So you hit the nail on the head there. We could get into like a long conversation about obfuscating what open ports you have, but even outside of that corporate network and that firewall, once again, hackers are trying real hard to get into home networks because they know that the next step is reaching into a corporate network due to all the access that we're creating. So that's been a big stressor for companies right now is the horrible controls around home networks.
Appreciate the update there, or information, Brian. So, and as I was actually going to bring that up into the next, I'm glad you brought it up, right?
Did I steal your thunder, Eddie? I'm sorry.
No. The thing is that that information is very important. Like, and it's interesting that even I sometimes, like, I forget to update my router because if you're in the middle of doing, let's say, a presentation and your router reboots, kind of sucks. You're trying to get your work done. So, you know, I even have to make sure, you know, every month or so, I'm just randomly checking it to see if there's a new update that's available within that environment, right? And so for us, it's one of these things where, you know, these workers do not have the knowledge a lot of times that others do to do that. I bet if you ask a lot of your employees, hey, when was the last time you updated your router firmware? A majority of them, or a great handful of them, will say, well, you can do that? I thought it automatically updates. I think that's some of those things that they just don't know because I've asked questions about that and they don't understand that. When we
Yeah,
started,
hey guys, sorry on the polls. I don't know if I'm launching it a bunch of times. I wasn't sure if it's actually launching the latest one. So
it's the one that says is poll 2 is scanning.
okay, yeah, scanning. Okay, so that's launched now. Okay.
Yep.
Sounds good. Well, I'll leave it open for a while so that everybody can respond. Okay.
Cool. Yep. We'll see. Whenever you put a poll up there, it's good to see if people are actually paying attention because they'd be clicking on something.
Well, and that's where, so Joel just said that he's seen 2 polls and answered.
Interesting.
So, okay.
Okay.
I'll try to rebuild this poll and launch it again. I figured nobody was responding, so nobody's seen the 3rd one. So
No one likes you, Anthony.
Thanks,
Get over it.
Well, I don't know what's going on.
That's what it is. It's out of spite, Anthony.
Come on, Zoom. Yeah.
All righty.
All right.
Hey, so
I'll try.
Eddie,
I'll try again. So
There we
Eddie,
go. Yeah.
I just to add to your conversation a little bit because it's timely. About a month ago, I was actually just sitting here in my home network, and I got a notification from my rudimentary IPS. You know, we're not talking corporate level, that somebody had hacked a Raspberry Pi in my network that I had literally updated the weekend before. So we're not talking about aging software. I have no idea to this day how they got in. I closed up my network. I rebuilt everything from scratch. I restored my server, basically just being completely paranoid because I still to this day have no idea how they got in my network. I don't even have open ports that redirect into my network. So I guess what I'm saying is the threat's real. These guys are state-sponsored terrorists nowadays. I mean, they have a lot of resources to throw at this. So I still wake up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat, wondering if they're still in my environment, and I just don't realize it, right? You see those articles where people attack corporate networks because they got into the fish tank temperature controller, right? That's running an outdated version of Linux. So the last thing I'll add is what does let me sleep well at night is we are actually a consumer of Arctic Wolf, and we have Arctic Wolf running on all our endpoint devices at our houses right now. So I do know they didn't get on my endpoint devices.
Yep. It is a nice peace of mind. I agree with that.
So it looks like your thing's finally working there. So it looks like Anthony, the engineer, figured it out.
Just launched it for the 4th time.
All right. So
fun.
some of the stuff that we want to make sure from a corporate first steps, things that you can do, and we'll go into this a little bit more, but first thing is multi-factor authentication. We know that multi-factor authentication is not the end all, and there's ways socially around it, but it is something to understand who is who. And I had a meeting with a customer last Monday where the customer called me in the morning during my team meeting, and this potential customer, not current customer, but they said, hey, Eddie, I have your business card. One of our employees got compromised in India, and they were able to affect our Active Directory through the VPN that we have set up. And I said, okay. I go, so did you have multi-factor to make sure that's who it was? They go, well, no, we haven't paid for the licenses yet. Sometimes a simple multi-factor, again, is not going to be able to remove every type of risk, but it is a good start. And it's very important to understand that multi-factor should be enabled on anywhere where you do have passwords. And most applications now allow you to do multi-factor, from Facebook to even games, right? I play a Fortnite and League of Legends with my kids, and sometimes with just myself, but there is multi-factor when you enable those. So it is something that you can actually do. When we think about trainings, it is very important to understand just having them do training that's just based off of some maybe best practices for the corporate world. It might be good to also give some training for information as it relates to the home network, especially as it goes to password management. A lot of your users, no matter how often you tell them not to use their same password for corporate as their personal, a lot of them are still doing that. It's really making sure that you, maybe if they're going to do that, make it a little bit harder. As an example, instead of allowing it to be 8 characters, maybe make it do 12 to 14. I know it might take them a little bit longer to type it, but over time they're going to learn how to do it. It'll be pretty simple, and you're going to be more secure over time. And if you think about CIS best benchmarks, 14 characters is kind of what people are wanting now. When we look at transferring files, what's happening when people are at home, they're using a lot of their external drive for backing up. They're using USB drives. It's better to use cloud applications and make sure that they're using those to transfer files versus transferring it from a personal laptop to their desktop over USB. Again, that might be a little bit easier for them, but again, you're causing, there could be risk that be contaminated because of those USBs. When we look at the last one, which is still, I think, the number one issue when it comes to security, is human error. And human error is, take your time. We talked about this and we saw this, and I showed you the information around it. Opening ports for quick access, having secure communications versus just communications. I think that if you take your time, you're going to save more time in the long run, because a lot of people are going in, and might have already done it because the last few weeks everyone's been setting this all up. What I would do is say, okay, we've already made these changes. Now let's sit back and let's think about what we did, and then start documenting everything that we did. So if something does happen, we know where to start. And then maybe, all right, everyone is working. Now let's slowly but surely start securing up those applications. So let's start getting them secure versus just having basic communications. What's interesting is that on the polling questions that I see, individuals, it's 41 to 41, is that people that actually do external vulnerability and internal vulnerability. What I've found is that a lot of people, if you would ask the question, how often do you do external and internal vulnerability? A majority of individuals seem like they do it monthly or quarterly. They don't do it continuously. And a lot of them will have these done during like a pen test, right? And so it's making sure that you are being more consistent with it, and maybe doing some ad hoc ones. Maybe go off the schedule a little bit to make sure that you are staying on top of things. If you're making major changes, like right now, everyone's made major change in their environment, they should be doing external scans right now to understand what is now available to the internet. That's very important to have.
Eddie, if I can add just a little bit to that, we're also seeing that with most of our customers, they are doing the bare minimum to pass an audit, right? And you guys got to do what you got to do, right? But what I see is most customers aren't being as thorough as they probably should be, because they've got a lot on their plate, and that's another worthy conversation too. If you should be doing more than the bare minimum audit requirements.
Exactly. People always say people love compliance because it lets them do things that maybe they wanted to do. But if they don't have to do it, unfortunately, a lot of people are very proactive. And it stinks because I talk to hundreds of people. I've talked to actually thousands of people about Arctic Wolf and others. And a majority of them, I would say, they're doing something because of compliance and because of regulatory, not because they want to be proactive. And I'm not saying that that's bad or good. It's just, unfortunately, that's just, a lot of times it comes down to the money that you need, right? The business does not want to invest in something maybe that they don't feel is necessary, right? And so it is something that we want to make sure that you at least understand those risks that you're putting within your environment. Now, if you think about take your time, there's a story out on Reddit that came out about a few weeks ago during this pandemic is going on early on. What happens is during a pandemic, individuals that are not traditionally doing IT support work or IT related tasks try to help in the overall assistance into how to help their employees. As we saw with this particular user who talked about how their boss disabled multi-factor because a user kept getting multi-factor alerts and calls saying, hey, can you please authenticate this? Called support, the IT manager, instead of just changing the password because somebody already had it, as you can tell, they decided to disable multi-factor. Well, right when they did that, then all of a sudden you have hackers who have access to their environment. Now, the hard part is that when you making sure that the task that you give to individuals who are helping is something that is repeatable and something that is easily managed. You're not going to have a new person come into your environment and start restoring databases, right? You're going to have them doing more tasks that can be more simplified, and having think, hey, if something is happening where multi-factor is being involved, reach out to me, right? Take on that. Again, they're helping you with other things, but you want to make sure that you are also putting some basic processes and some security controls on the changes that are happening, because a lot of change management companies are just fast tracking these changes. And unfortunately, that's when mistakes are going to be made.
Hey, Eddie.
Yes.
Just to keep track, you've got about 15 minutes so that we can still have some time to give away those Amazon gift cards and do Kahoot. So, and I'll stop talking because I'm not helping here.
No, that's fine. Some of the recommendations that we have for securing remote workers that the industry has is make sure you're communicating with employees, especially with all these different types of scams that are happening. Don't click links that you're supposed to. Make sure that they are hovering over those links. If you can't, don't open them up from your phone. Enable a mobile MDM application if you can. Leverage a VPN to access the company resources. Also, what you want to do is make sure that you are establishing a management process for vulnerability. What's interesting is that a lot of you did external scans and vulnerability scans. What I'd like to know is, and I'll have someone just type it in there, and Anthony, tell me if somebody says it, but I want to know if you've ever fixed every single vulnerability you've gotten from either an external scan or an internal scan where you fixed every vulnerability. So Anthony, if someone says that they have, I'd like to see how many people have that. But going through every single vulnerability seems to be hard for most individuals.
Yeah. No way was the first response. Has not yet happened.
A golf clap would be in order. Yeah, if someone said yes.
So enable multi-factor authentication, have a strong backup and DR policy. One of the great things about working with a partnership with Eagle is that they're very, 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 very excellent when it comes to a backup and DR policy. When you think about the NIST framework, NIST, from a security standpoint, the last part of that is recoverability. How do you know what to recover without you knowing what's been detected and needs to be and considered a threat, and how do you resolve that? Working with a partner like Eagle is very important in that as well, because they are able to help not justify, but show you how those policies should be set up as it relates to security. So it's very important to look at that as well. Establishing a 24/7 monitoring of infrastructure and cloud services. Now, again, we are Arctic Wolf. That is what we do. But I will tell you that if you're not having someone look at your environment 24/7, you can't tell me you're secure. Like it's physically it's impossible for you to be looking at that and knowing something's happening. It's like if you called ADT and you said, "Hey, I only want I'm good from 8 to 5. I don't need you to look at me from 5 to 8." That's not why we pay for those services. We pay for 24/7. Also, looking in the dark web for account takeover and credentials and things like that is very important around the dark web, especially now, because you have a lot of individuals who are signing up for applications, VPNs, things like that over the internet that might be fake websites. And I know that you're supposed to tell them, hey, I keep telling them never use their corporate email, but they don't want to get the email, so they just throw it to a corporate, so they have their own web filter. So it's something that you should look into as well. Implement advanced threat hunt detection and response capabilities. This is something that a lot of individuals don't have high-end cybersecurity analysts. One of the things I would like to ask is, I did see because we have our own poll questions, but I did want to know on the chat is, has anybody on here have more than 3 cybersecurity certified experts? So SANS level certified analysts. I'll take any SANS certification for that, because if you do, I'd like to maybe see how many there are, because traditionally a lot of individuals, they just don't have that ability to keep that staff, right? And I think that's something that is very hard to do by yourself. And if you're not going to do it yourself,
Yeah, that would have been a good poll question.
yeah.
Looks like Martin says they have one. Ryan said no, nope.
Yeah. So,
but yeah, my guess, like you said, is nobody has up to 3.
right. And most of your,
there's a
and I
guy.
bet you that the one person that that he's talking about too has a lot of other jobs than just. I don't think that Martin and others want to just they have that person just to look at logs all day. I'm assuming that's not what it is, and so for us, it's really making sure. So, and make sure that you do keep IT healthy and well staffed. And I think this is interesting because I'm about to bring this up, but then Joel said my answer to the unpolled question: overworked, understaffed, and underfunded. Our last recommendation: keep IT healthy and well staffed. I keep seeing it over and over and over again. And I think it's something that we need to understand, that IT is, you guys are, when it comes to essential in a business, IT people is what makes the business go. And so I do want to say thank you for everyone who's especially on here for that type of, for all the help and things you're doing for your company. It's very powerful.
True story. Hey, Eddie, your friendly time Nazi is here to remind you got about 10 minutes.
Cool. So I'm going to go through this last thing here, and then I want to go over a little bit of Arctic Wolf, and then I will send out some information. Actually, I went over this. I want to go over a Shodan exercise and then Arctic Wolf. So when we look at one of the things that Brian talked about was, how do you know what ports are now open on the at your remote workers' offices? Do they have applications that are actually going into the firewall and allowing ports to be open, like if they're running a Plex or something like that? One of the ways they can do this is with Shodan. Whenever I've done these presentations, only a small handful of individuals, especially those who are analysts, have actually used Shodan. So what Shodan is a way to understand what windows and doors essentially are open on your home network. So you can do this. It's an Internet of Things thing to find out what ports are open, what things that you have open. So as an example, if you go to google.com and you type in "what is my IP," you get a public IP address. You'll take that public IP address and paste that into shodan.io. So you go to shodan.io website, and on the very top where the white box with the red search icon is, you paste it in there and you say search. It will actually show you what ports you have open at your home network. And so I had the no ports open, and I kind of locked mine down. I don't have like things that I'm servicing out, Plex or other type of Internet of Things sending out. A lot of you who've created your own home network wireless security system, as of Brian Anderson, as an example, is like 800 cameras. You want to make sure that those aren't forward facing out to the internet unless you have it locked down to a particular port that you know exactly what's happening, and it's kind of isolated, right? Which one of the things Brian always told me is isolate your networks when it comes to that. So I don't know if you've ever done that. I know it looks like Garrett says icanhazip.com. There's another one out there.
ICANN has IP.
Yeah, ICANN has IP. Yeah. The URL is for this is shodan.io, and it's on here. So it's shodan.io. That's an option that you can actually do.
And this is good homework to send to your work colleagues too, right? Just remind everyone the importance of this.
Yep, it's always good. It's really open, and so it is something that I'm gonna assume that if you have never heard of this before, have never done this before, again, if you can just type maybe no. For those who say yes, I already get it. But if you've never done this before, maybe type no, and it might give you to know that this is actually good information. I don't know if this is good for you there on there. So a little bit how Arctic Wolf can actually assist. Now, We have two services that we offer. Again, we have managed risk and we have managed detection response. Managed risk is our vulnerabilities scanning tool. Think of this like a Tenable or a replacement to like Nessus as well. MDR is our 24/7 SOC that we have. With our MDR service, every one of our customers get 2 cybersecurity experts. So you would go from, as an example, Martin would go from 1 to 3. For example, we give you 2 named cybersecurity experts that are assigned to your staff. They only support a small amount of customers, and they work in North America. They're not over in India or Israel or anything like that. So they're North America based. You also have a 24/7 SOC of individuals monitoring your environment 24/7. So you have over 100 to 150 people that are helping support you 24/7. But of those, 2 of them are assigned to your staff, which is awesome. So now you actually have experts that are on there. Now, when we look at
Hey, Eddie.
Yeah.
If people aren't looking at the chats, they should. There's a lot of awesome contribution going on there. People showing their favorite websites for some of this. I just wanted to toss that out.
Oh,
I don't know if it's going to all attendees. I think it's just coming to us.
No, it says all
from what I
panelists.
see, so.
Oh, all panelists.
Panelists, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we'll share some of that back. I'll shut up now.
So, yeah, share some of it back. Shields Up is one. The GRC Shields Up. So we'll make sure you're on there. But it does look like people who were responding to me. I got a whole lot of no's about they weren't doing it, but starting to do it right now, which is good. So with MDR, we have 3 ways in which we monitor your environment. We have physical sensor that has all the logs that be sent up that sensor. We look at net flow data. We have an agent that gets deployed on your endpoints and your servers. We don't charge you for our agent. So think about having an EDR without having to pay for it. Awesome. We're looking at all different changes that are happening on there. And we can also contain a device. So if one of your users gets compromised at home, we would be able to disable that user's device and it wouldn't be able to access your environment. We also have the ability to connect in with cloud applications, Office 365, G Suite, Azure, AWS, and stuff like that. So really 3 attack surfaces that we wanted to make sure we hit: on-premise, endpoints, and cloud. And again, that all goes up into our ISOC, and that is where you also have your concierge security team that are working with you. And again, 2 of those individuals that are working with you, and it's very, very powerful. We have the managed risk offering, which is our vulnerability scanning. And these individuals, this platform allows you to not just do a scan, but it actually helps you manage the vulnerabilities. We know you're not going to get through all of them, but we're going to want to highlight the ones that are most important to you and make it easy for you to understand how to resolve those. And your concierge security team will actually work with you. One of the questions that was asked is, where is the link to scan on Shodan? If you just go to shodan.io at the very top, there's a little, looks like an address bar. That's where you'll use, and you'll type it in there. So when we look at, this is the last thing, I had a customer that allowed me to post this on here, Dustin Newby, located over in Pratt Regional Medical over there in Kansas. We got them implemented about 2 to 3 months ago. And before all this stuff happened, so I'd say like 4 months ago. And what happened was we got them all ready to go, helping healthcare. But with this pandemic, he really wanted to show, and he posted this on LinkedIn, so we didn't even ask him to. I'd say, hey, I saw you did this. Can I put this on a slide? He said yes. That, having us monitor you while things are going on, it could be this pandemic. It could be that somebody leaves the company. It could be that there's a snowstorm, an ice storm, or things like that. Making sure that no matter what type of challenges are out there, they're having your security looked at. Security is just one of those things where you have to be looking at 24/7. And Arctic Wolf, all we would, I'd love at least to have a conversation about what we do in a more deep dive. And that's the only thing I always recommend, is at least have the opportunity to have a conversation.